Hi, and welcome to week 2, Understanding Old Testament Narrative. There we go, and moving there. So our goals for this week are to apply interpretive methods in the evaluation of a narrative text. So now we're looking at the narrative genre, and we want to be able to create some methodology to understand narrative. We want to develop a personal interpretive methodology for analyzing this biblical text, and then finally to evaluate the tension between divine inspiration and classic narrative storytelling. Now we have a couple of assignments and a discussion. In assignment 2-1, you're to do a word study on hesed, which is normally translated kindness in Genesis 1:26. You have a couple of resources, Bible study tools, concordance, and Bible Hub on understanding this word, which they label as 1823. Now, one of the places that people make a mistake is you are not looking for every instance of kindness in the Bible to do a word study. You're looking for every instance of chesed, the Hebrew word, and how it is translated in different ways. But let me back up. The goal of the assignment is to understand the range of meaning for a Hebrew word and how it is translated throughout the Bible. And then specifically, how does an understanding of this really important word impact our understanding of Genesis 1, verse 26? So if we look at the depth and breadth of an understanding of a word, we can understand why the author chose that word. Now, I've chosen chesed as your keyword, which is spelled either C-H-E-S-E-D or more correctly H-E-S-E-D in Hebrew, because I feel that this word is perhaps, well, at least it's in the top 10 of the most important words we find in Hebrew. It is really God's loving kindness towards mankind. So it is a word that God uses about himself to define his relationship with mankind. And so we need to understand when a biblical author is inspired to use this word, what are they trying to communicate? So I want you to look up every instance of the Hebrew word hesed in the Bible, usually translated kindness in the ESV. And one of your first goals is it translated the same in the NIV and the RSV and the King James and the New King James and the Living Bible and other versions as well, or is it different? This word is identified by Strong, which is the #1 classification system for Hebrew words, is Strong's number 2617. So if you did a Google search of Strong's number 2617, you would actually find some more resources, but that you have a link to Strong's concordance in the course material. I want you to complete the provided worksheet, which is a good step-by-step process for how to do a word study, analyzing a minimum of 30 of the 247 occurrences of the word in the Old Testament. Be sure to include an in-depth analysis of all occurrences of the root word found in the Pentateuch. And the reason for this is if you want to understand a word, and let's say you're the author, and I wanted to understand how you use words. Well, I would look at not only your paper today, but I would look at your papers over your entire high school and early college career and identify what keywords you might use. For instance, I use the word cool a lot. Well, what do I mean by that word? Well, if you were to look at how Brian's use of writing over the course of time develops, you would find the context by which I use the word cool. And someone once accused me of cool is a word that I use specifically when I'm not paying attention, but I want to throw a word in so you think I am. Well, that's partly true at least. So by understanding the word cool, for me, you can understand not only what am I trying to say, but why am I saying it, and a bit about my context. In the same way, we want to know how Moses, who wrote Genesis, uses the word in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, because that's our most important. So we want to know how Moses uses it in the books that Moses wrote. We also should look at other biblical authors, more precisely Old Testament over New Testament. Well, that's Greek anyway, but we want to look as close to Moses and see how contextually it might have been understood. For instance, in the 70s, cool is used in a different way than it might have been used in the 1870s. Then follow the research guide to evaluate the word and how it's used in the balance of the Old Testament, with an emphasis on how it's used in Genesis 24:27. It's a fun assignment. It's a long assignment. So I would encourage you to get started on this early in the week so you're not trapped on Monday trying to do all the work associated. I then want you to conclude with a 2-page paper at the end of the worksheet explaining the range of meaning for the word and its most likely understanding in Genesis, and the word as attributed to God's character. And by the way, this is a typo. It should be Genesis 1:26, not 24:27. Okay, so assignment 2-2. It's an essay. After completing the reading incline, write a 2 to 3 page paper summarizing the proper way to conduct a contextual study of a passage. We learned in week 1 that one of the best scientific tools we have to bridge that gap of time, space, and culture is understanding the historical context of a passage. So you're going to write a 2 to 3 page methodology paper for how do you do it. Be sure to include a discussion of the historical, cultural context and include a conclusion reflecting upon the importance of understanding the context of a passage in your hermeneutical methodology. Another big part of that to understand, or for my grading, is going to be biblical examples. So I'm not only looking at your inclusion and engagement of Klein in the paper, but I'm looking at biblical examples that you can share. So on our discussion, I want, in your opinion, and that's informed opinion with evidence, does the biblical author's use of narrative components like plot, character development, and dialogue diminish the authority of Scripture? Now, this class, coming from Moody, I would not expect anyone to say that there is not authority in Scripture. I think that everyone will hands down say that, in fact, Scripture has authority. It is true. It is inspired by God, and that the biblical author wrote this passage for a purpose. I get all that. That is assumed. My point is, can the biblical author be inspired to give us a story that is either not historically factual, and they're giving us this story as inspired by God as an illustration for how we should behave? So that's the first question. The second question is, as we look at plot, character development, and dialogue, Moses, for instance, is writing about Abraham in Genesis. And in his writing about Abraham, that happened 600 years before Moses was born. So if it happened hundreds of years before Moses, how did he know the dialogue? And is it important that that dialogue is exact? So did God dictate to Moses every word that Abraham said to Isaac and Sarah, or did God inspire Abraham with the plot and Abraham used artistic license in coming up with how the characters are developed, what facts to leave in, what facts to leave out? and the specific dialogue, because we have words that are put in their mouths. Do those words have to be historically 100% accurate, or did Moses, through his inspiration, have license to create an artistic story? And the reason why this becomes important is these stories are clearly artistic. They are clearly written with plot twists and turns, and characters are developed or not developed in ways that we don't necessarily understand. And I'm asking for your opinion based upon the reading and your own research and your examples out of the Bible to tell me whether every detail has to be exact, or whether the author, as inspired by God, through the authority of Scripture, had license to create art. In your comments on other posts, consider the following. What factors or angles might they have missed? What would you add? Try to pick somebody who disagrees with you and have a dialogue about how you each disagree with one another. That's a meaningful way for each of you to expand on your thought processes and your analysis and create meaningful dialogue. So, last thoughts, give me a call or email with any questions. I am traveling towards the end of this week. I'm in Antigua right now, but I am heading back to North Carolina on Saturday. So Saturday might be a little difficult to reach me, but I will have email and my phone with me, so I shouldn't miss anything. And by Sunday morning, I'll be back up to full speed. So have a great day. Thanks for all the effort, and I'll talk to you soon.